It sounds like you can't hear me, but I can hear you. Oh, you can. Okay. Okay. Great. Perfect. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Greenfield Public Schools School Committee meeting, Monday, November 9th, 2020 at 6 p.m. This meeting is being held fully remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts' March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GLC 30A, Section 20. Member Johnson Musad, let's move into a roll call. Would you do a roll call for the call to order, please?
Certainly. Member Karen? I think that's a yes. I saw you earlier. Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Here.
Member Hollins?
Here.
Secretary Johnson Musad, I am here. Chair Proietti?
Here.
Member Wall? And Mayor Wiedegardner?
I don't see either Member Wall or Mayor Wiedegardner on yet.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Wonderful. So I'll call the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. We'll move right into the approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the Thursday, October 27, 2020 meeting?
I move to approve those minutes you just mentioned.
That's a motion from Member Johnson Musad and a second.
Second.
Once again, oh, that was Member Ekstrom. I saw her turn her microphone off. Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Member Karen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom,
Yes.
Member Hollings,
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad, I'm a yes. Chair Prayati.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so we'll move into the third section of the agenda, which is public comment. And the way public comment works in our remote environment is we'll first take comments from anyone who's on the WebEx platform with us and is able to type in the chat their name and that they wish to comment. After that, if you're unable to use the chat function because you've joined us through another platform, the telephone perhaps, you can wait and we will call on people who are on by phone. Do we have anyone in the chat?
Pamela Cutler.
Wonderful. Okay, Pamela Cutler, if you're on the line with us and can put yourself on, take yourself off mute, you'll have 3 minutes. Please start with your name and the town you reside in, and we will time you. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm Pamela Cutler. I reside in Greenfield. I'm a parent of a Greenfield student. Thank you for the opportunity to make a public comment. Tonight, I'd like to comment on the lack of visibility into the phased approach to school reentry for students and the lack of accountability and communication to parents. We're trying our best to help our children be successful with remote learning and to be understanding of the unique issues that being in the midst of a pandemic poses. We're trying to be in this together with you. However, the lack of direct communication from this school district feels disrespectful of the role we play in this approach to education. I expect to learn of decisions impacting my child directly from GSD, not from an article in the local newspaper that I may or may not have access to and may or may not have been factual. It's unprofessional at best. There's really just no excuse for this lack of communication that we've been on the receiving end of during this school year. I sent an email to this group 11 days ago stating these same points to be met with a literal 9-word response from Glenn, thank you, thanking me for taking the time to write. Nothing from any other member, and certainly no increase in communication from the school district. I'd really like you to consider ways to rectify this and attempt to repair the relationship with the families of our school district, because I can't see this lack of communication being a positive contributor to the relationship we have to share for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Appreciate your comments. Do we have any other people wishing to comment tonight, indicating so in the chat?
I don't see anybody.
Okay, so we'll come back around to that. Do we have anyone who's on the line, on the telephone, that wishes to make a public comment? You can speak up now. Hearing none, we'll do one last call on anyone in the chat.
Nope.
All right, so we will move on from public comment to the committee reports. Let's see, my chair's report, I will be very brief. I realized earlier today that I'd forgotten about 2 things that I had intended to plan on for this meeting tonight. And then Member Johnson Musad just told me about a third one I forgot. So at least I know I've got the 3, and I'm hoping there won't be any more. But I want to apologize specifically for, I told Member Ekstrom that I would be the one to post the budget meeting, subcommittee meeting for this week, and I totally forgot to do it. So we're going to try and schedule something for Thursday or Friday morning of this week. I had intended to do it for tomorrow morning. That's not happening because we do have to give at least 2 days notice. And then the other thing I completely forgot about is appointing someone else from the school committee to work with Member Johnson Musad on our new subcommittee on racial justice, anti-racism. And so I will have that for our next meeting. I like to make sure we had a nice talk about this. I want to make sure it's on the agenda before we move forward with that appointment. And I do think that is all I have to report this evening. I know we've got a bunch of stuff, so I'm sure everyone appreciates that I keep it short because I talk too much in these meetings already. So that's the chair's report. We can move into the report from the any other, let's see, any other subcommittees before we get to the superintendent?
Chair, can I make a request?
Please.
Before subcommittee reports, we have our student representatives with us.
Oh, of
I wonder
course.
if we
Yep.
could hear next from our student reps.
I would love that.
We're
And-
joined by Danny Lanoy, who's a senior, and Shane Toomey, who's on, we can see you, and
Yep.
he's an 8th grader at Greenfield High School.
Is it just the two of you guys? All
It's
right.
enough.
Let's take your report, please.
Shane Toomey. So first off, Student Council just received a $500 grant to start a virtual Best Buddies group. Student Council, Key Club, and Volleyball helped the rec department with their drive-through Halloween at Highland Park, and the Student Council is also doing a virtual school spirit project called the Class Cup. Different grades compete against each other with unique weekly activities like breast cancer awareness and pink out. And at the end of the year, the grade with the most points wins. A good amount of people have participated so far, so we're seeing really good participation, people coming together. And right now, seniors are in the lead.
And I'm Danny Lanois, and we have an update for Key Club. So Miss Moore and the Key Club are organizing the JHS annual Turkey Trot. And this year, of course, it will be virtual. There will be a choice of a 10K, 5K, or 3K, and it will be completed on the week of the 23rd to the 29th of this month. Students and staff will be participating by running or walking their race and then submit their finish times through Google Forms. JHS will post a wall of fame for best times for class and faculty. All participants will receive a certificate and be entered into a drawing for gift cards to Tito's, the Garden Theater, and Duncan. And as always, this will go to the Class Cup, so hopefully seniors will win this time. And also, I have an update for GHS TV.
Please, go ahead.
So Mr. Leo Wolf and his GHS TV class are working hard for creating a fun Friday video announcement, which will be ran each Friday in advisory classes. We look forward to seeing the students' final productions and enjoyed by the whole entire school.
For fall sports, the golf team finished with a 7-1 record and played well all season. The boys and girls cross country competed well this season, and the girls had some of the personal against. And senior Katie Hazelton scored her 100th goal against Frontier Monday, November 2nd. So congratulations to Katie.
Just going to talk about remote learning and how it's going for us. So for me personally, I'm doing pretty well so far. I'm getting enough work to keep me busy, and I'm learning in my classes, which was something really important to me with remote learning. But with AP classes, it is a tiny bit hard because I'm getting these classes twice a week when I would usually get it 3 to 5 times a week. And then there's also breakout rooms what teachers do, and they can be sort of awkward sometimes because we're still not used to them, especially digitally. But a lot of teachers found a solution to this to where it's optional instead of rather being required. So, yeah.
Remote learning is going really well for me. I think the workload is perfectly balanced where it's not too much to be overwhelming, but it's not too little. So you've got, like, you're able to fill that 1 hour time period. I do think some ways of assigning the work from teachers has been a little challenging where they've met for half an hour and then they give you some work that's expected to be finished. And then you meet at the end of class to discuss it. And I find that sometimes makes you feel rushed, but most of the time it is a manageable thing. But with the work aside, I think online learning is running really smoothly and teachers are being very understanding of any Wi-Fi issues or other challenges that are coming up with students. And I've heard a lot of positive feedback from a lot of students as well. So I think it's going very well.
Is that the end of your report?
Yes.
Awesome. I really enjoyed how you did it like a newscast. I kind of felt I didn't feel so bad about missing PBS NewsHour right now. You guys were awesome. I appreciate all those updates. I wonder if any of our school committee members have any questions for either Danny or Shane.
Member Hollins raised her hand.
Oh, Member Hollins, please go ahead.
Yeah,
Don't
I
raise your
just
hand. You're not on my screen.
thank you for being here. Tell you how much I'm sorry. I did have a question,
Go ahead.
and I wanted to thank you for being here because it's a great thing. When you said that, I was glad to hear remote learning is going well. It sounds like you're both in advanced classes. Do you have a sense it's going well for students that are not in advanced classes across the board, or are you more familiar with the advanced students? If you know, or just
I think teachers are being very inclusive, and like they're having students stay after if they're struggling. So when other students leave the meet, they have students stay with them. So I think teachers are doing their best to catch up with students and make sure they understand what's going on. So I do think it's going well for students.
great.
Same way, he's also taking more standardized classes, and he thinks that it's running really smoothly. And especially if he does need help, he can just stay after school because we have this extra help period. So that's pretty helpful too.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from school committee members?
I'd just like to thank Shane and Danny. Thank you for joining us. You're very brave. You are the first ever virtual student reps at a school committee meeting in the history of Greenfield Public Schools, so much as I'm aware. And so you've made history tonight. Congratulations. Thanks for being with us. Nice job.
Agreed on all points. Thank you guys very much. And I should warn you, school committee is really boring, so we will not be offended at all if you go now.
Yeah, you've got to go. Go now.
Thanks again.
Run fast.
Yeah.
And I want to interject just for a second. If someone would be so kind from the school committee to try and help, Member Wall is having trouble getting into the meeting. And I do believe the problem she's having, if someone could help her, and I apologize for the interjection here, but she is likely trying to log in as the school committee username and password, which I am logged in with, and it likely won't let her also log in with that. She needs to log in, like create her own login. I just can't, while I'm running the meeting, also help her out. I did send Member Ekstrom, but I recently figured out what the problem was. So I'm telling her and to anyone else who can try to help Member Wall.
She emailed me
All right,
and said
thank
it won't
you.
let her in without a password, and she's on the phone.
Yeah, she needs to not be logged in as the GPS K-12, because I know she uses that account to run the meetings on the redrawing of the district map. She needs to create her own account.
Yep.
Or just click the link. No, clicking the link won't work because it'll log her in as
Yeah,
the login that I'm using.
And I don't hear, I'm on the phone, but I don't know how to make the login go away.
Oh, hi, Member Wall. I think
Hi,
let's
Member
see,
Wall.
you might need to go to, let me see. I'll try to chat with you, Member Wall, and give you some tips about how to log out and log back in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Okay. The fun of remote school committee meetings. What other subcommittee reports do we have? I've already fessed up we don't have a budget report. Are there other subcommittees? Member Wall, do you have something from the redrawing of the district map?
Yes, I do. We had a meeting and we talked about the superintendent had a wonderful presentation of all the buildings that have been schools in the past for Greenfield with slides and everything. And we talked about, we listened to a lot of parents come and tell us what they would like to have for schools in the future. And we voted to bring to the school committee the fact that we would like to become an advisory committee, and so that we could bring in more community members to help us. And so I'm waiting to hear from Member Johnson and the superintendent on when we can meet again. We're Susan and I are free all of next week, but I haven't gotten anything back from them. So that's where we are.
Thank you very much. I did feel like we set up this committee initially as an advisory committee. Am I remembering that incorrectly?
I think we weren't specific about what
Okay.
kind, and so we assumed it was a subcommittee.
Okay.
If I remember well, I shouldn't be stealing your thunder here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's
It's hard to have thunder when you're on the phone.
yeah.
Okay, so we can check to go back and double check the minutes. I may be remembering the anti-racism committee, and perhaps we set that up as an advisory committee because they were around the same time.
At our last meeting, we adjusted the anti-racism group to be an advisory committee
Okay.
instead of a subcommittee. We just need to do the same thing for the redrawing.
Okay, so I have something I'm going to put on my running list of agenda items that Member Johnson Musad has so graciously created for me, so I don't forget any more things. So we'll tackle that at the next meeting, because I agree you definitely should be able to have a wider swath of feedback.
Right. And
members.
we still need to go ahead and have a meeting whenever the superintendent and Member Johnson are free.
Okay.
Before we become an advisory committee, but that's what we would like to do, is bring in the community.
Wonderful.
To help us.
I think that's an excellent idea. As we know, the committee the community definitely has opinions about this topic.
Right.
Any other report from you, Member Wall?
Nope.
Any other questions from the school committee?
Wait, I'm sorry, doesn't it have report from building and construction or something? I feel like there was a meeting.
I was about to move on. We haven't closed committee reports yet. Is that what you're asking?
Well, isn't that a committee report?
Yeah, I hadn't closed it yet. I was making sure Member Wall was done.
Sorry, my mistake.
No, that's fine. It's out. Member Wall, you didn't interject, so I'm going to move on. As long as there's no questions from other school committee members.
Just that I haven't been able to figure out, because I don't think I've logged in, so I don't think I have a way of knowing how to instruct Member Wall how to log out of this platform.
Okay, I'm sorry, Member Wall. We'll have to probably figure it.
I'm still trying.
Okay, we'll have to probably figure it out together after the meeting's over.
Sorry.
No, these things happen. We'll get better at it as we move on. I keep hoping. Okay, so planning and construction. Member Hollins, you usually report from that committee. Do you have a report for us?
There hasn't been another meeting since our last school committee meeting.
Thank you. Member Ekstrom, you asked about that. Did you have specific questions for Member Hollins or Member Wall?
I asked about it because there was planning and construction, I think, talked about reopening the work that was going to have to be done to reopen Green River School. But also they discussed something about opening, what their thoughts were on phase 2 opening would be.
I can comment on that again if you like.
Please go ahead.
There was a discussion, I always ask about Green River School, and Carol, who's handling the work that's being done there, said that the estimate is still that the Green River School work would be finished by February. That's an estimate of when she thought of this year. And it was a comment she made, it wasn't an agenda topic, about whether or not the school committee, she was commenting on the new cost of energy with the new air exchange systems, was that she estimated the cost of energy now with the new air exchange to be increased by about 50%. And then there was a comment, it was sort of a question, had the school committee considered, instead of opening every school for a few students, opening a smaller number of schools until until it was time for all the students to return, just from a point of view of cost conservation. Item, and I passed that on because I don't know that we have talked about that, and it was a reasonable comment to pass on.
I do have something else that I'd like to interject if I could.
Please, Member Wall, go ahead.
We're meeting tomorrow, the Planning and Construction Committee, to begin the discussion on capital improvements for the city of Greenfield. And I just wanted to let everybody know that. And I have not had time to look at it yet to see what there is for the schools, but that will be part of our discussion tomorrow, and I hope there is something.
Thank you, Member Wall. And that something, is that something this, because we haven't talked about it as a school committee, and excuse my ignorance, is that something the school committee usually talks about, or is that something, where does that typically come from? The superintendent, the school committee, both? Anyone have some guidance for me?
I don't know. I mean,
I think it's supposed to come from the superintendent to the school committee, to be endorsed to the capital planning committee. And I think that decision was made a couple of years ago, so that the school committee basically knows what it is that's being requested and endorses it.
Okay, so I'll have to get with the superintendent and figure out what.
Chair, if I could say, a couple of years ago, there was a schedule made of basic items that the school committee needed to address per month. I was looking at it recently, and this was the time we were supposed to have on our agenda review of capital requests. I'll find that list and send it to you.
That sounds like a wonderful list to have. I would love to have that.
Yeah. I think people put together what are the basic things to do, and it, like approving the school calendar, and it was a month by month of the main things we have to do. And I found it the other day, and I will re-find it and send it to you.
Please, thank you. So we'll do some follow-up on capital planning requests from the district. Thank you for that, Member Wall and Member Hollins. Any other committee reports? I think that's where we are. All right, so hearing none, I will go into the superintendent's report.
Oh, great. Thank you, Chair. My report will be brief this evening because we have a special guest with us, if you will, to help on one of the first agenda items. So I'm going to try to be brief in my remarks. And that guest is Ben Senadella, who's with us from Nexus Consulting. Ben has been assisting the district in performing the HVAC assessments and reports that you all have a copy of. The most recent reports were sent over Friday afternoon. They're hot off the press. And so he'll be speaking about this shortly. And I just wanted to let folks at home know that because safety is so important to our staff, our students, and the community, this has been an extensive effort, and we really want to thank Ben for being on board and also the committee for phasing in so that we can really make sure we have key metrics in good shape in order to progress through the phase plan. And I just want to start my remarks this evening by saying that I, along with our principals and our teachers, we very much are proud of what's happening in remote learning, and there is no replacement for in-person learning. And we so are eager to have our students back. And so that is why we are working around the clock to make it possible. And the report that you're about to hear tonight is an absolutely critical component of that. And we're really looking forward to speaking about it in just a few moments. A couple updates for you. On Friday, you may be aware that the Department of Public Health and the Department of Education released entirely updated color-coded health metrics, along with new guidance on how to interpret that data. I will say it is a little bit challenging to keep up with the changes in how the game is played as you're playing it. At the same time, I do think that some of the changes are helpful in terms of reflecting nuances in the community. They do support a return to in-person learning. Of course, because the changes come after many months of negotiations were in process, for example, it is challenging to adapt very quickly to some of the very specific information that's coming that has a lot of different implications. I'm going to leave it at that because I won't bore you with all the implications, but everything relates to everything at this point in time. So suffices to say that changes a lot of the work that we had in the chute. And we're adapting, but that just came out on Friday, and here we are on Monday. I wanted to note that the committee at the last meeting approved the remote learning specialist, and we have already begun the process of holding interviews for that. That position was posted, and we have applicants, and interviews were held today, in fact. I'm really excited about that because our teachers are out there working their tails off, and they really, truly need a dedicated staff member who is there to help them with the tricks of the trade. We were talking today about how in the weeks leading up to the start of the school year, we held a lot of professional development around specific technology. For example, using Google Chrome on your browser, there are different plugins, different ways that you can support and make the most of your computer. Those plugins changed just shortly before school started. And so a number of our district staff were sort of working overtime to fill in the gaps and help redo the training that had just been offered to teachers. That's an example of some of the challenges that are outside of our control and why we need to be poised to respond. I also just want to thank our students because the modeling that students are doing, the tech skills and savvy, jumping on here tonight, it's really remarkable, and they really deserve the best, whether we're in person or remote. This in no way means we want to just stay remote. This position will be necessary even as we return to in-person learning, because some students will always want to remain remote, and we've left that choice open to them. We've hired a new central office receptionist. So if you are looking for a friendly face coming in the door at central office or answering the phone, her name is Caitlin. She'll be starting in the next week. And we're really thrilled to have her. She brings over 10 years in education, and she'll be assisting out. This Wednesday, November 11th, school will be closed in observance of Veterans Day. We want to remind everyone that the schools are working hard to remain apolitical, in that they are, our goal and our charge is to support all students and our community, regardless of political beliefs or anything else. And we know that in this election season, and as we approach Veterans Day, people have strong feelings about all kinds of topics. Our job is to support and nurture a democracy where students get to express those opinions, think critically, and come to good decisions for themselves, and give them lots of information and knowledge to do that. So I want to thank those who have served, and also to remind folks that that is our job as a public school district, and that's what we endeavor to do. Finally, the school committee received earlier this evening a slideshow from the Academy of Early Learning. And I just, we're not going to go through it tonight because they wanted to ensure that the privacy for all the students, and that's important. So I just wanted to thank the Academy of Early Learning for sharing that with the committee. And Chair, perhaps we could include that in a future committee meeting, all the ways that our youngest learners are participating, which looks a little different than our oldest learners. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any questions from the committee for the superintendent? I think we're all looking forward to the HVAC discussion. Okay.
Right, so Ben is here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let him
officially move into that. Give me 1 second. So, hearing no questions, we will move into the phase 2 implementation update agenda item, and specifically the HVAC update. And I do see that we have Ben, is it Senadella?
It is Senadella, yes.
Senadella, is it Italian like Proietti?
Very Italian, exactly.
Yes, we're kindred spirits. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Ben. Do you typically give an overview before we ask questions? How do you want to do this?
It's totally up to you guys. I could do a quick overview. I'd love to tell you a quick 10-second synopsis on what we do and who we are.
Please.
So, my name is Ben Sinadella. I have a business partner who's also in the trade, not just an investor. We both have about 15 years experience. His name is Josh Sprague. And we consult commercial facilities, private-owned manufacturing facilities, school districts, anything like that, in running efficiently, running properly, making good decisions, taking grant money, spending it wisely, stuff like that. In our background, in our education, is in science and building automation and energy management. So when it comes to air quality, indoor air quality, commercial buildings, air changes, it's our thing. We like it. I heard you said you're excited about the HVAC report. It's not that exciting, but I had fun doing this too, because I actually was lucky to have, we picked up 41 new schools in the last 3 or 4 months, and Greenfield was one of the only ones I've been in before. So I knew a couple of the schools. I was familiar with the equipment. I knew the PM programs that were already in place, and that made it really relaxing to me, a little less stressful, because I knew walking in, there's a gentleman, George Vandelinder. I worked with him for many years, actually probably about 7 or 8 years, maybe a little less. And I knew that he already was keeping good PM programs on all the equipment. So I'd like to state that too, that I'm really happy to give you this report, because it is a good one. And sometimes it's not easy to do these meetings that to suggest expensive repairs, and it stinks. And not the case in tonight.
Awesome.
So,
that's a great synopsis. Yeah. What highlights could you give us from what you found?
So highlights are, I did Greenfield Middle School, Newton, Federal, Four Corners, North Parish, and High School. I found all equipment running properly, except exhaust fans. Every piece of air handling equipment serving spaces where people occupy that give fresh air or mixed fresh air were working properly. Any exhaust fan we found were approved to be repaired immediately, and were usually fixed within 24 to 48 hours. And I was called back on multiple phases to retest and confirm that they were operating, and they were. There is one fan left. It needs one part. I don't remember what school. Oh, Newton School. Unfortunately, it's drywalled in above a ceiling, and it's not easy to repair. And I believe Jordana was just going to try to find another bathroom to use in that local area of that hallway until George finds a way to fix that fan. One thing, and by the way, anytime, if anyone has a question or I'm talking too much, just give me the hold on finger and I'll hold on.
You're doing great, because honestly, I don't know about the rest of the committee members. I had a little bit of trouble identifying exactly what I should be asking about from your report. So yeah, a little bit of an overview like you're doing is super helpful.
All right, yeah, I'll dig into a random report. High school's right on top. So there is a couple pages.
Ben, before you go ahead, can I just say, if you're listening at home and you'd like to look along, there's a separate link just for these materials, gpsk12.org. Go to school committee tab on the right. And then today's packet is up at the top. And it's 11/9/20 materials number 2. And that packet has the memo and the report that he's going through. So this is all of our report findings. They're public here, and you can follow along at home. Go ahead, Ben.
Great. So I'll look at the high school, but I have everything in front of me if anyone has questions on any other school tested. What we do is we go in and we talk about the script.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So you had said that everything is running properly. Is that everything is running properly as sort of the baseline, what we would expect it to be running properly, as opposed to what is being asked for now?
Great question. So when I or Josh or any of our techs look at a piece of equipment on a report such as this, we look as designed. So if we walk up to a unit and it's supposed to have a certain pulley on it, a certain belt, and move a certain amount of air to a certain space, That's what we go off of. We actually used a balancing report from 2014 when some of the newer equipment was installed and some other data from past years to see how they used to run. And then we use that as a baseline to make sure they're running properly. What's nice about indoor air quality testing is you can quickly validate your work because you're literally taking air volume tests. So for example, if we walk up to a room and look at some old data from 2014 that says this air handler is supposed to move 7,000 CFM and it's 700 CFM per room, we're physically checking that. That's what's nice about this kind of testing is it's quick, easy validation. If we see a building or a room, I should say, is doing not the right amount of air changes and or is not heating properly, we mark it. Immediately at the end of the day, as soon as we're done with our report, send the updated deficiencies to central maintenance. They troubleshoot unless they tell us to troubleshoot. And that's how we proceeded. So we test equipment and make the large and bold statement of it's running properly based on if it's running like it should be as designed. Our testing was in rooms agreed upon before we get on site by whoever, central maintenance, school committee, superintendent. And so we take this list of rooms and we go in and I want to make this point also. We don't take prints from an architect or an engineer from years ago when the building was built and use those numbers. We actually double check every measurement of all the rooms, log the volumes of rooms, and log any deficiencies we notice. Even if it was engineered wrong, if we think it's wrong, we note it. So we go in, we check the volume of the room. We then make sure it heats or cools properly. We then follow that up with a CFM reading. So if you're looking at the report, you have our volume of the room, our CFM reading, and then it says equipment type. If you're looking at the high school with me, most of them say MAU, and we'll get into that in a minute. Those are mixed air units. It's great to have, and I'll get into that in a minute. Type of reading, I always note what kind of equipment we use for accountability purposes. So we use a flow hood. All of our equipment is calibrated yearly per manufacturer's recommendations. So actually they were just done in July. AP stands for air purifier. And if there was a number under the AP column, that means I suggest putting an air purifier in that room to supplement the air quality, the cleaning of the air, because the room might have a larger volume than other rooms, or the unit might not be pushing as much air as it used to because a fan motor is weaker than it was years ago. And then you have exhaust CFM is EX and return CFM is RET. Those are the last two columns, EX and RET. So if you just quick scan the ACH column, I'm not saying this is to go by, in black ink here, but I typically go 3.5 air changes, 4 air changes is acceptable. Anything below, there's a deficiency. Anything above is really good. So that is what I was saying in the beginning is I get all these schools, there's 5, 6, 7 of them. And I was really happy to see that 90% of the readings were above 4 air changes. The air purifiers, I was also happy to learn the district purchased a large amount of them just in case. A lot of districts did this summer. And the rooms that I suggest the air purifiers in, I just want to reiterate, I hope that the occupants of those rooms don't get nervous because there's an air purifier in it. It's strictly just because that room is larger and or that piece of equipment just doesn't move or work like it used to, and it might need some oil or some lubrication. But in the meantime, why not put a great standalone air purifier in that room? They're a piece of equipment that actually holds a HEPA filter, and to have a HEPA filter assisting your air changes per hour is a great supplementation or supplement. Is there anything else you guys wanted me to go over?
I think we'll open it up specific questions? It looks like Superintendent Harper, who's on my screen, might have something she wants to say.
I just wanted to comment, echoing what Ben just said about the air purifiers. So back in August, I think when the facilities guidance first came out, we knew that we were going to have to conduct this testing. We also know, as you heard from Ben, that he was going to be in hot demand. I think you said 31 other school districts. And so I want to thank Ben for getting quickly on our schedule as best as his schedule allowed. Because it's not a one and done. As you've heard him say, he's been in all of our buildings for multiple rounds of testing. The rooms selected are for phase 2. So rather than have him go through every room in every building, which would have possibly delayed phase 2, he prioritized those rooms that we directed him to test for because we need them in phase 2. So these reports give us what we need to know to come back to the committee and say, here's where we are. We're in really good shape to start phase 2. As far as the air purifying units, we knew in August that we might or might not find some issues when we got these reports. And we knew that if we waited until October or November when we got our results back, that we would have supply chain issues and many more months of waiting if we needed air purifiers at that point. We purchased as a district over 20 standalone air purifying units. And we were really pleased when, I believe we purchased 30. When Ben came back and said we needed 19, we were really pleased that we had gone ahead and made that investment early and at a bulk. And, it's an example of how we're trying to plan ahead so that there are no delays when information comes up. And Ben also talked about the great working relationship with George. I really can't thank George enough. Ben told me that in all the districts he worked with, one of the things that impressed him about Greenfield is every time he came back the next day after testing something, it was already fixed. And George and his crew and Alan in facilities and the custodians have all been really terrific. The principals have been clearing out of the buildings to let him come through and test. So Ben, I want to thank you and your team for your great work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Harper. I actually have a comment related to this discussion before I see if there's any more questions, because I did read your memo, Ben, and I want to point out my favorite part of it, because you haven't been a part of our school committee meetings, but I've been harping on some of the issues with the guidance that we've received related to specifically this issue. And in your memo, you actually say, due to the lack of guidance by governing bodies such as the CDC to provide actual ACH guidelines or parameters related to HVAC equipment, we're unable to provide ACH recommendations when related to any data gathering associated with COVID testing. We can't create guidelines from their suggestions, the CDC or this other organization, ASHRAE, nor are we able to describe what a safe workspace may consist of when related to health concerns linked to sickness and disease control. I think that gets at the crux of what we're doing with a lot of our COVID response. We've been given guidelines that seem to be changing all the time. The superintendent said it much better earlier than I just did. And these are guidelines with no requiring us to seek out experts such as yourself, Ben, but no parameters to guide the experts. And I wonder if you could comment a little bit about that, specifically related to what I think everyone wants to know is, are our air handling systems possibly going to contribute to disease spread if we bring students back into these buildings?
That's a tough question to answer. And
I'm sure it is, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I need to ask.
That's why I'm here. I'm on the spot. It's good. So here's what's tricky. We did a lot of research on filtration, probably August. August was a really heavy month for information coming in every day. And so a lot of ASHRAE is an organization of heating and engineers, heating and air conditioning engineers that A lot of books, a lot of my books that I went to college with were written or covered by ASHRAE. So we like ASHRAE, and ASHRAE says, well, maybe we can put MERV 13 filters in and suggest people to do that. Then HVAC professionals everywhere said, well, how are you going to do that? It's going to strain the HVAC equipment, and they're going to, fry motors and burn things up and starve for air. And so then they said, okay, well, what about MERV 11s? And professionals said again, well, MERV 11s are okay, but what's the difference between 11s and 8s? 13s are the ones that stop a water droplet. And it morphed, and it always looked like something different. And where I felt that something grabbed some traction was end of August. The whole outside air thing came up again. Outside air was always a hot topic, but all of a sudden, when all these engineers everywhere and HVAC companies said we can't stick MERV 13s or HEPA, especially not HEPA filters. HEPA filters you can barely put in any existing equipment unless it is designed for HEPA filter. But even MERV 13 is the same thing. So now outside air comes up again, and all of a sudden we're seeing, as a professional HVAC company, let's jack open as much outside air as possible. Here's the idea behind that. Fresh air that's coming from outside of the building and traveling the ductwork, not hitting anything else, not mixing with any return air or anything, doing 100% outside air and putting it in the space. It's fresh. It's like opening a window or a door. What I've been suggesting, and Jordana and I talked about this, I don't know if she remembers, it was a long time ago when we first started talking, and I've been working with George on this, is let's open up outside air dampers on all our air handling equipment until it gets too cold. Then let's bring the outside air dampers a little more towards closed, and maybe by December they're going to be at 15%, which will knock down our outside air intake. But that's when George and I also agreed on, let's make sure the exhausts work really well. So now, as it gets colder out, we can't bring in as much outside air, but let's exhaust as much as possible. And that's the trajectory George and I are taking. So to answer your question, air handling equipment moves air, clean or dirty. A lot of people are putting, this is my opinion, a lot of people are putting UV lights in air handlers. UV light doesn't necessarily clean moving air. It cleans what the UV light is hitting. So we would clean the filters probably overnight, or within 2 hours of an empty building would clean the filters. But then you run the air handler again the next day, and your filters are contaminated with dirty air. My final comment is the good news. Your high school has, I believe mostly, I can double check the prints tomorrow, makeup air, I believe 7 or 9 makeup air units. In makeup air units, if you're looking for a building to put people in that I would say I'd feel comfortable saying is healthy, is the high school, because it's actually bringing in year round. These units are designed to bring in outside air. It doesn't matter if it's -20 out. They're designed to do it. They bring in outside air and fully exhaust the air that's in the building every second it's running during the day. So you have, I think, first and second floor in the high school, multiple rooms that are served by makeup air units. And I thought it was a pretty slick idea to test those rooms first to make sure everything's running right, because that way you're putting kids in while they're still testing and no vaccines. You're putting kids in the freshest air possible that's offered in that school. Also, it depends on how many occupants are in a room. So I was talking to a district the other day in this area, Hampshire, Franklin County, and there was only a couple little kids going to be in a library. And I said, yeah, I'm not, a disease control consultant, but I'd imagine 2 small kids in a 16,000 volume library is put them in each end. I think that's great. Make sure the HVAC equipment's running well. So that's something to think about. So if it's a smaller room and has smaller air changes, and you can fit people in that are 6 feet apart, and they're wearing masks, and the HVAC system is running and bringing everything through the filters, and you have outside air infiltration, and your exhaust fans are working, you're running as healthy as you can. Does that help at all? It's tough.
That helps quite a bit. It does.
Okay.
I appreciate that. It's pretty much exactly what I think we kind of knew already, but it's helpful to have the measurements and an expert tell us, you know, what works and what doesn't, and that by and large, it sounds like what you're saying is that we're in decent shape, our high school being in great shape, if we're following the occupancy numbers, and the other schools are their systems are doing what they're designed to do, and they're clean and they're functioning properly.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chair, could I add something?
Please.
It's also important to note that that is as of this final round of testing. And the reason that report is coming forward now is because Ben can sit here and say, I think you're running in really good shape. And the first earlier reports is where we were identifying the issues, and Ben was finding out, okay, you've got an exhaust fan, it needs a part. George was going in and fixing and going through multiple rounds of that. So I don't want to give the impression that we waited to find out that actually was fine all along, because it's an iterative process. See how it is, fix it, go back and test. And I've been impressed at the speed that process has happened with. Identify problems and then fix it. Ben and I have had many chats on the cell phone as he's driving between jobs, and I say, when can you get back here again? And he says, I'll try to get you back in again tomorrow, and he does. So
That's great.
We're pleased about that. Thank you.
Thank you. So other questions, comments from the school committee members? I'm not hearing any. I'm not seeing anyone raise a hand, but I only have a couple people on my screen. Who's that?
That's Susan.
Member Ekstrom, go ahead.
So, I'm curious, is there a point at which the changes per hour just becomes redundant and it doesn't need to be that often? Do you know what I mean? So
I don't.
So you have, I don't know, 4 air changes per hour. And is there a point at, like, 9, it's just inefficient and...
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, yeah, not necessarily. So a system is designed by heat loss and air changes per hour, especially depending on the setting. So you have office spaces, schoolrooms, cafeterias that have kitchen equipment. The tech wing has welders, so the welding, wing of classes might be designed for 12 air changes per hour. So each room's design should stay that number for the duration of the life of that equipment, and that number does not lead to or equal to any kind of inefficiencies or use of power or energy. It's just size of ductwork, airflow, size of room. You're not using any more electricity. You're not using any more hot water. Nothing of that nature.
Member Ekstrom, does that answer your question? You have follow-up?
Well, it's so ASHRAE is saying that 4 and above is adequate during these trying times that we're living in.
So ASHRAE, I have politely, slightly ignored the last few months because they started really recommending things that aren't feasible. So a piece of equipment that was designed in 2001 for a space to do 5 air changes or 4 air changes per hour, you cannot make do more. You cannot, even if you put a bigger motor in it and a smaller pulley to spin the fan faster, the ductwork can only handle so much velocity, which equals CFM and air changes. So eventually, I don't know the gentleman's name. There was a man in Great Barrington that had, I believe he was an inspector, had a good conversation with, believe it or not, there's a position underneath Governor Baker that is HVAC related, and it's probably for just this reason. And I was informed that we're going to all start agreeing in the trade that buildings can only be tested to what the building was designed for. So I can't test the high school that was built in, I think, like 2012 or 13, right? I cannot put it against the new high school in Wilbraham that was built 2 years ago again with these green standards, and I can't put it against you know, high school, of course, the middle school. Well, that's the same school, isn't it? I can't put it against Four Corners.
No,
because
yeah.
they were built in different times. So you have to go into Four Corners. So ASHRAE would love to recommend everyone gets 12 air changes per hour because that's what hospital rooms get. But I, as an HVAC professional, cannot take that wonderful recommendation and then go to Four Corners that was built in 70-something and make that happen. So that's when we turned to, let's get the best air changes as possible as designed and make sure everything's running properly and everything's clean. And that's when we started recommending testing to actual design of equipment.
And so would it be fair to say that you couldn't do a universal, there needs to be X number of exchanges per hour across all rooms?
Correct. I can recommend certain air changes per room depending what that room is utilized for, like I said, right? Like a nurse's office, we were in, I think it was Leverett the other day, and I didn't like where the medical waiting room was. I didn't like the air changes there, but I found another room that was not the nurse's office, and I suggested that now be the nurse's office. So we do make those decisions sometimes. And that's more of the way we do. And we don't try to change the equipment or make something better. We try to just adjust the situation as we see fit.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions, comments, discussion from school committee members?
I just want to comment on Member Ekstrom's point about a general standard. The other purpose of this report coming forward and Ben addressing questions tonight is that families really do need to be empowered with the information to decide for themselves. If you know, we don't, speaking as a person, this isn't my trade, we don't tend to think in terms of air changes per hour or how much air is flowing through a space. When working with our nurse leader and our Board of Health and public health officials, we started thinking about opening windows and increasing ventilation. And you suddenly become very cognizant of it. But your example between a hospital and the air quality there, or the number of air changes, and a school building, it is noticeably different. So we can improve to the best of our ability. We can make it as safe as is possible for us. And then ultimately, when we offer in-person services, we want to make this information available to families as well, so they're informed and empowered.
Great point. Thank you, Superintendent Harper. Further questions, discussion, questions for Ben? Speak now, school committee. All right, well, Ben, I can't thank you enough. The report is excellent. Your expertise is very appreciated. All the hard work you put in, I really appreciate it. And I hope we can continue to work with you as we need to. Thank you.
Wonderful. It'd be my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Have a great night. Okay, Superintendent Harper, do we have additional phase 2 implementation discussion items, updates, anything?
We do not. The rest of the update was provided in the last meeting. This was the only holdout piece because we had additional retests we needed to get back to.
Great. Any further questions or discussion from school committee members about this topic before we move on?
I have a question.
Member Hollins, please.
I just have a question how this stated information on air exchange will have an impact on when we activate phase 2 or the next phase of students being in the building.
Well, we really needed this information to inform the impact bargaining with the union for starters. Isn't that correct? I don't know if anyone else from the negotiating wants to comment further.
Yes, this was important information related to the negotiations.
And then certainly we want to know that our condition of our air handling units in our schools aren't a cause for concern related to virus spread. Does that answer your question? Superintendent Harper, did you want to add something?
I did, Chair. As far as I'm concerned, this was a holdout item. meaning without the sort of clean bill of health, as it were, for our air handling units and our air quality. Somebody has a lot of background noise. I don't know where it is coming from, but it's quite loud from somebody's mic. Until we had this piece of information, I certainly wasn't comfortable coming to the committee and saying, we're all clear. With the status of the ventilation or air changes unknown, and with some of the without some of the repairs that had been conducted, I was not comfortable saying to you, I think our schools are in a safe condition for students and staff, some of whom have medical vulnerabilities, to come into our buildings. Based on the information we have tonight, what we know is that we have taken all reasonable steps. Can we say with 100% certainty that we're filtering out everything from the air? No, we can't do that. But we can say that we've taken reasonable precautions, we've shared the data publicly, and we've certainly exceeded, I think, what we have to do and gone to a level that demonstrates that we're really committed to the health and well-being of our students and staff. And with that done, I certainly am looking for the committee to fully endorse continuing to move into phase 2. The committee was fully supportive of this at the last meeting, but waiting on this piece of information means that you can't quite give the go-ahead for the start date and the buses to roll. And the negotiations, of course, do need to continue, but this piece of information would have been required either way for the committee.
Superintendent. So at the last meeting, we made a motion to move to phase 2 as of today. And I know that there is the bargaining that needs to continue. Do you need a further motion or endorsement from us again this evening?
Is it the committee's intent that at this point, as soon as we're ready to begin, we can proceed into phase 2 pending negotiations?
Well, we should confirm that. I believe that was our intent when we made that motion last week to move into phase 2 as of today, as of November 9. Does any committee member disagree with that?
I'm seeing shaking heads and
Yeah.
no one speaking.
I only have a couple
no.
of people on my screen, but I'm seeing that we're not disagreeing with that. So we are, what would you say, all systems go from the school committee? Based on the motion we made last week, I don't think we need anything else unless you feel like you want a further endorsement. It sounds like we could get that rather easily.
It might be helpful to note that this updated information, which was required, has now been received, and giving further support.
I can do it. Yeah. So I would entertain a motion at this point from a school committee member to re-endorse, or find a better word.
Proceed. Proceed.
To proceed fully with the phase 2 implementation based on the updated information provided on HVAC this evening.
So moved.
Oh,
I heard Member Ekstrom. Member Johnson-Musa, do you want to do the second?
I'll second.
Okay, and Susan Farber, do you have what you need? I wasn't very eloquent. I'm sorry.
It's very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any discussion on that from school committee members? Okay, hearing no discussion, let's move right into a vote on that. Member Johnson-Musa, can you do a roll call, please?
Member Karen.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom.
Yes.
Member Hollins.
Yes.
Okay. Secretary Johnson-Musa, I'm a yes. Chair Proietti?
Yes.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, and Member Wall?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Do we know when this will start?
That's a good question to ask, because I don't know what the answer to that is.
I can provide you a further update as to where we stand right now. I don't know if Ed Boudrin is still with us. So with that approval of the committee tonight,
Ed is still on the line.
Ed's still on the line, yes. So So the last
Yes, we're here.
approval was essentially conditional upon this report coming forward. We now have it. I would say we're all systems go at this point and pending successful negotiations. Ed is here. We've been in all systems go in terms of transportation now trying to route students in for phase 2 based on approval of those parents. So let me just take you through the steps. We need the school committee approval. We need a union agreement. We need to contact every single parent in phase 2 and offer them phase 2 services. They have the right to opt in or opt out. Once they've opted in, we have to arrange transportation and create a bus route for them. We're extremely limited on bus transportation because you can only fit 1 or 2 students on a bus because of the COVID guidelines. Ed's here, he can talk about it much more than I can. We're using all the safety precautions on the buses, but we're limited in terms of the numbers. So we're looking at staggering the start times and how to actually physically move these students in. It's essentially individually creating a routing and a school system start and end time and transportation map for all the individual students in phase 2. So it's a small number of students and an incredible amount of manual work. The pupil services team is calling families and individually following and tailoring IEPs and ed plans and English language learners and contacting families. Translation services are going on to try to make sure that we're reaching families. And then all of that, when you call, you still can't give a start date until we know when the buses can roll. And I suspect that Ed is happy to hear tonight that the committee is further endorsing it because that will give him more ammunition to continue routing students. Ed, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I do. The situation, just so everybody understands, is we have 24 students going out of district right now. So the fleet of vans that we use and the drivers are basically used up on a daily basis, going to and coming, bringing the kids back to the district. So we're very limited on manpower, but we do have the yellow buses. And under the superintendent's direction, and knowing we're coming to phase 2, she basically directed us to all hands on deck to figure out what we can do with what limited pieces of equipment we have. So I have Jake here with me, and I ordered him, basically directed him to get his team together and start looking at the process. So I'd like to have him give you the information where we're at right now, so you have an idea of what we're going to need to proceed. Jake?
Hello. So basically what we're looking at is we have, as Ed mentioned before, all of our equipment going out of district right now. All of our drivers are occupied going out of district. Depending on start times for the schools, I think that's still a little bit unclear to me. We can potentially accommodate everything, but that's going to involve different tiers. And what I say when I mean tiers is just, for example, last year, the high school started at 7:45 and the elementary schools started at 8:30. So if we could have a 45-minute window for the students between, the middle school and the elementary schools, that would be great for us. But also having a 15-minute staggered start for all of the elementary schools. I hope I'm being clear, so if you have any questions, please let me know. But for example, Newton School starts at 9:30, then hopefully we could get Federal Street to start at 9:45 and Four Corners to start at 10 and AEL to start at 10:15. I don't know what help Kosmeskis will provide to us at this time. If we could get them involved, we might be able to cut down on those times.
Spacing distance.
Yeah, based on distance. Yeah, Susan?
So we haven't really started about, or I'm sorry, we haven't discussed what start times would be when people actually went back in person.
Yeah.
So that's actually an interesting question because people will be online, but also will be in person, and some of those classes that are taken in person, or when they're in person, there's still, some of these kids are still integrated with other classes that would have to happen at the same time, and everything is going on for those who are not in school. And so having our start times being staggered might be a challenge. I'm thinking out loud. Jordana, you know better than I do, but am I on the right trail there? You're on mute, hon.
Yes, it's a challenge.
Okay.
What you're hearing from the transportation department is that they're trying to work with the parameters we're asking them to do first. And they're kind of coming up with, we may not be able to do it on that exact schedule.
Yeah.
And so we're in the final stages there. And with this vote tonight, we're going to keep moving forward. We may be, I really think this is a priority. We're talking about a small number of high need students for whom not having in-person services is more than an inconvenience, and I mean no slight to anybody else, because it is a significant inconvenience to every single family listening. We fully appreciate that. But for some students, it is absolutely not possible physically or otherwise to access remote learning unless they're in person. And for those students, it is our commitment to get them in our buildings as soon as possible. And we're working individually with those families to make that happen. And that's, I believe very strongly in this. It's an obligation of ours. And we, we don't want to say too much more because we're in active negotiations on this topic. But just talking about the process we're using is highly individualized.
Okay. So I guess we need to remember to ask families to be flexible while we're trying to figure this out. I know it's like that, but it seems more relevant even now.
So the other thing that I would like to bring up, if I could, if we could have clarification on exactly what the spacing requirements are
in our district.
Yeah, in our district, DESI's had a lot of individualized guidance for buses. They've said, 6 feet when possible, but if you're on a small yellow bus that has like 12 passengers, you can go to 1 to a seat. In other cases, it's been 3 feet. I think that would be very helpful for planning purposes, just knowing exactly how many students we can actually fit on our small yellow buses.
So Jake, you're saying that, I just want to clarify what you're asking. There's been like 2 options, if I'm remembering from the DESI guidance. There was like a 6 foot or a 3 foot would be okay too in terms of distance on a bus. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and they've also mentioned going to 1 to a seat, where the spacing requirements, it didn't even seem to be based on footage. So I mean, honestly, it's very confusing when you're planning it. You kind of just have no idea what we're actually going off of.
I don't know that we have, as a school committee, discussed that to that detailed of a level. Does anyone recall if we've discussed that?
I don't think so.
I'm hearing we haven't.
I'd like to add into Jake's question.
Sure,
on that.
go ahead.
There's 2 factions of the distance. One being the out of district. If we could go to two pupils if we can going out of district, that would give an adjustment to Jake that would be very helpful to bring other drivers into the district locally. And it would also up our revenue if we were able to add 1 more student per van, which is going to be in the long run helpful to us. and we're practicing very safe conditions now, windows open, masks on, continuous cleaning, that type of thing. If we went to one child per seat on the bus and staggered their positions on the bus, that's what some of the other districts are doing. That would really give him a boost in the number that we could make in one round of pickup and drop off to the schools. I just want to make another note. Early on in the year, when we were all discussing this, I mentioned several times in the COVID operation that we need a cleaning station, and that would be really helpful to keep the vans and the buses moving quickly if we had a station where the buses, once they drop the kids off, could go to and get assistance in cleaning quickly and going right back out to the next round. If you have any questions on that, it would be very helpful to clean them quickly and get them turned around.
Okay, so let's take it as two different things, Ed. Thank you. So we've got a question about how the district wants to handle spacing between students on a bus. And then there's a question about a cleaning station. That's probably not a school committee thing, I'm thinking. I think of setting up setting up a place to clean the buses is something that we can probably do under the superintendent's guidance. But I think we do have some ability to at least discuss how we want to handle spacing on the buses if there's a question about, and of course it's the guidance, so of course it's a question. I didn't even have to say that out loud. Do we have the school committee thoughts, the superintendent thoughts about this?
I mean, I could say I'm not in a position tonight.
Go ahead, Glenn, and then Member Holland.
I could say I don't feel I'm in a position tonight to make a determination on the number of students per bus or the number of students in a seat. I mean, that requires a level of expertise that I think is beyond our scope as school committee members. And so we really need to find out all of the things that we need to be making decisions about to move to phase 2. I don't know if that's necessarily something that definitely needs a school committee motion on, but that's where I am. I don't think I could vote on it, not having any information or not having an expert here to guide us on what is needed to protect the students.
Okay, thank you. Member Holland?
I had a couple of comments. One is, I agree with member that, we're not really experts in making this decision, but I do think when there's a general standard being used among other districts, it's kind of like when do you close school when snow falls. If there are other districts around us that are saying, this is a standard we're using and there's general agreement, I think it's safe to go with that. And I had two other comments. One is every single place I go before I walk in the door, wherever it is, someone brings out a little machine, checks my temperature. So I have a question, do we do that with children getting on the bus? And my last comment has to do with special ed transportation. It sounds like we are assuming that every single child must be brought in by district transportation. And I just wanted to say that I understand that many parents do not have a car and do not have the ability to bring their children in, but it's allowed under special ed transportation if a parent wants to bring their child in to repay them for that. And I'm wondering if we're asking parents, if we're saying we have a lot of transportation restrictions, is there any chance you'd be willing to bring your child in? It's not unreasonable to do that. I'm just wondering if we're mentioning that to parents, because there may be parents.
Well, as a parent of a special ed child who's been called multiple times already, yeah, there's a lot of feedback on the line here. I'm not sure who it's from, but if everyone who's not talking could mute,
asking if it's been a consideration.
Well, we're asked every time, and every time we say no, we drive our child, and we're not included in the transportation map. That's, yeah, we've told.
I'm just mentioning that you're allowed to reimburse parents, and I didn't know if that maybe is a part of the solution. It's totally optional to parents, but I just thought I'd mention it.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? I think the superintendent wanted to go, and then was that Katie? Yeah, remember Karen after the superintendent?
Sure.
You're still on.
Go ahead, member Karen.
I really do find the idea of asking parents if they can, drive their children or not interesting, but I wonder about the legality of it. And what I mean is, if we set up a district to transport children based on this number going at a specific time, and then 2 years later, a parent, for whatever need changed in their lives, they need to put them on a bus to get them to school, what happens then? We are required by law to provide a ride to children within a specific.
And then we transport them.
So then we have to, now we've made this decision based on a specific number of children to be driven. So I'm not sure what works.
You're asking
can
how we keep up
clarify.
with the numbers. Remember, Karen, is that what you're asking? Like how we keep up with it as a moving target?
Well, that sort of, basically legally we're required to bring children to school based on a specific distance from the building, regardless if the parent says, no, I will drive them or not. We cannot hold them to a contract that you said you would drive your kid. I made space for your kid to go to school, but I don't have space for a bus. So I don't want us to get into a predicament where all of a sudden we're stuck. So I just want to make sure that we're not just making plans that we can't stick to, I guess. Or maybe I'm wrong and we can hold them to that statement that they said they would drive their kid and they have to do it for the rest of the year or until we can physically change our situation. I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Can I clarify my comment? I said it was completely I said it was completely optional. It's just that if I were a parent and I had a car, which everyone doesn't, and someone said, we have this COVID situation, so we won't be able to bring your child in till 10:30 because of all these transportation things, I might say, how about if I drive my child in? But I'm just saying it's an option, completely optional. And some parents might want to do that. That's all I was saying.
I remember Karen's concerns. It sounds to me like there's understanding that there's that option, but also there's an incredible logistical challenge to set these routes up to begin with. And then if you make them based on one set of assumptions and then need to change them later, how workable is that? How much of a turnaround time does the transportation need to do that? What impact does it have on budget and, all that? So I guess in that sense, it seems to me to design for design for complete transportation route, and then if parents want to go in and out of that, they will have the ability to do so.
I think I might have some information that would be useful for this.
Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, so the information that I received from Janet and Pupil Services was that these are students who, the list that we received, are specifically asking for transportation. It's a list of 28 students. It's far from what we would transport in a normal year, but these are 28 students and families who are specifically asking for transportation for their special education students.
Thank you so much. So other questions or comments about any of this related to transportation? Superintendent, did you want to speak to it?
Well, I was just going to say we're continuing to follow the Department of Education guidance that was issued on this. The problem, as I see it, is that it's essentially written for a traditional yellow school bus. So it talks about, you remember we shared this in our reopening plan before it was voted. It talks about seating on a bus and looking at it. It's sort of like every seat, you have to stagger where you're sitting on the seat so that you're essentially 3 feet apart. But the configuration of a small van is just different. And so if you're trying to think about 3 feet apart, and what I really hear the committee saying is to continue to use our professional guidance. What I would suggest, Ed and Jake, is that you folks draft a protocol with the input that we've been having from our lead nurse and public health officials. and that we finalize it and bring it back to the committee. But, understanding that 3 feet with masks and ventilation is an accepted guideline, that, I think we need to prioritize bringing students to and from school and be practical about the fact that, there is increased proximity to other students when you're returning to in-person learning. And so we are moving into that phase where people have to make those decisions about their own risk levels and comfort. And our goal, as voted by the school committee, is to return to this phase 2 in person with a small number of students in particular. I'm hearing the committee say continue to use professional guidance and best judgment to follow that health information. And we can formalize that as a protocol and just bring it back to the committee. Protocols can be developed without the committee's approval. I think this information, though, is helpful for public discussion.
If I might, thank you, Jordana. We will do that as quickly as possible and get the information out to everyone. At the same time, I want to say to everyone, the Cosmescus busing would be a critical part of our plan that would lighten the load for transportation in the district if we can get them on board with a few buses. So we'll continue to work on that aspect also and let you know as soon as we have something.
I appreciate that, Ed. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Any further questions or comments for the transportation folks from the school committee? All right, hearing none. Ed and Jake, thank you very much. Appreciate you joining us. We're going to move on to the next agenda item, which I will talk about a little bit. This one I put on here, the district walkability discussion. So I've been working with a couple of folks from the district on the transportation negotiations. And I had actually made an assumption that our crossing guards were going to be a part of that union. And they are a new union to our district. And what I found out is that they weren't included. And it became a little bit of a bigger discussion. So for some period of time, the crossing guards in the district actually reported to the chief of police. And at some point, the district inherited those folks. And what I'm told in general is that there is, and I'm speaking very generally, I don't even have anecdotal information, that there is a lot of turnover in those positions, that the folks that do those jobs are, I think, only making minimum wage. I could be wrong about that. And that we also have, at least me as a school committee member, I think others have been approached pretty regularly. And I know I've spoken in the past, even before I was on school committee, with the superintendent about the walkability of the district. Being a parent who has a house close to the middle school, but still walked my middle schooler to the middle school every day because crossing High Street is just not possible. That's just one example. But I think that in learning about the crossing guards and in continuing to look at walkability in the district, which has been a discussion for years now, I thought that we should talk about this as a school district and perhaps expand the charge of the committee, soon to be advisory group, that is working on redrawing the district map, to also include some discussion of walkability in the district. And this is just something that came to my attention, and I felt like it perhaps warranted further discussion. So I did go ahead of time and write out what could possibly be a motion, and we'll see where it goes. But I would ask for any member to make a motion of their own, or the motion that I put together was, I move the school committee expand the charge of the district map redrawing committee, soon to be advisory group, to include a goal of improving walkability to schools for our students. But I would happily entertain another motion if we want to talk about it differently, or just a motion to approve in a second for that. Anyone?
Chair Wall, I actually have a different approach, which is respectfully request that you withdraw the motion only because
I didn't make a motion yet. I just suggested it.
you said that this was already included in our charge. I was able to look up the notes from our September meeting. Let's see. The September 14th meeting was when this redrawing redistricting committee was formed and had a number of items listed in the discussion for what would be included in the charge of the group. And included in that is consider transportation costs, walkable, bikeable routes, as well as other items, such as equity, diversity, so on. So
Wow, thank you for looking that up. I didn't recall specifically walkability being in that, so I appreciate that. Perhaps we don't need to discuss further. I don't know. Can we open it up in case anyone else has other comments?
Comment?
Please, Member Holland.
Thank you, Glenn, for going back to the motion. I wouldn't have remembered that really, that walkability was a significant part of our charge. But I wanted to say, and maybe the superintendent could clarify, a few years ago, we actually started working with a consulting group from Boston that works with school districts on walkability, walkable routes, how to train children, how to find the best places to cross streets. They have some grant money, I think, for bike paths. I don't remember. They worked with Northampton, but that's what they do exclusively. I think maybe we could remember and see if they're still doing that and use them again. I seem to recall they came and did some training and studied our schools and walkways. It's unclear, but I seem to recall that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion?
Can I comment on the?
Oh, please, Superintendent Harper, go ahead.
I think Member Hollins is referring to Safe Routes to School. It's a Mass DOT affiliate. Omar Mejias from Safe Routes to School came out and met with Health, Safety, and Facilities, Katie, I think, last year. And we mostly every year get an updated walkability report. For a while, we were engaged in a study where we collected the data of every single walker and rider. We were also holding bike rodeos and offering training. We have received grants to help students get bikes, get helmets. The rec department has been a great partner with us on this in years past. And so our efforts over the years have been to improve walking, riding, and the routes that are safe to get to and from the schools. So one year when we were looking at eliminating a bus to Newton, we had this group, Safe Routes to School, come and walk some of the routes that would have to be walked if we didn't have a bus there to determine if it was met safety guidelines, had adequate lighting, if the sidewalks were raised enough, if they were degraded in certain areas, if they needed paving, if they had side rails, if you went over a stream, if there were leaf litter or if they were plowed and so forth. So we engage in that. It's really through coordination with the city, DPW, and other folks because of the Safe Streets grant and a lot of the different work that sort of overlaps in this area. So it is, sometimes it's slow because if you get in the pipeline for a state project, like when they redid the intersection near Newton School, that took many years to get in the pipeline and then redo that. So a lot of these assessments are sort of tied into those municipal projects, and they really do improve the ability to, so we sort of have that part of the sustainable master plan, I believe, through the city has this long range vision of continuing to improve those walkable routes. So we sort of tie into that and you kind of chip away at it over time, always thinking, how do we make this better for walking, riding, environmental friendliness, and also just because, as you said earlier, not everyone has a vehicle.
Thank you. I appreciate all of that, everyone's contributions. I'm wondering if anyone else from school committee wants to make a comment or have a question or suggestion. So I think it's good that we just had the discussion and we probably don't need a motion at this time. It also sounds like it's pretty interconnected, which I imagine with things that are happening, master plan, the PD, all of that. I would just say to the Member Wall that if I can be of assistance with moving forward on this piece or any other piece of the redrawing of the district map, please don't hesitate to include me and bring things to the school committee for discussion as well. So we'll move on. And what I noticed is that there is a difference in agenda items between the original posting for this meeting and the actual agenda that went out, that was posted officially. The appointment of some negotiators for the administrative assistant contract has dropped off of the agenda. It was on the posting. It didn't make it onto the agenda for some reason. And I am going to actually, this is an appointment the chair makes. I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And if someone wants to squawk, we'll do it again at the next meeting. And what I would like to actually do is appoint Member Wall and Member Hollins to do this negotiating. I know Member Hollins, so we're overwhelmed with negotiating. Let me say that we don't have enough school committee members to do all the union negotiating at this point. But I would, it sounds like Member Hollins has some experience with this contract, and Member Wall is not yet experienced at all with contract negotiations, so I think they'll be an excellent team on this. Any questions or comments or discussion about that appointment? Did have a discussion earlier that there was a question as to maybe that the school committee should have a chance to approve my appointments, and I have drawn a blank on whether or not that's how we do it. If anyone who knows more than me can remember, be happy to put it up for approval, a motion to approve. Does anyone remember? No.
I think historically the chairperson proposes and the school committee disposes. I think that's how it works, but doesn't matter.
When you say disposes, like kicks them out, terminates them, or?
No, they endorse it. Here's what I'd like to do. The committee endorses
I would take a motion to endorse Member Wall and Member Hollins as the negotiators for the administrative assistant contract.
Well, I'll move it because I'm glad to do it.
And a second.
Really?
That's somebody.
Sure, I'll second it.
Okay, I think that was Member Ekstrom as the second. Any discussion? I think members just aren't paying attention, if you ask me. Any discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote on that. Member Johnson Musad, please.
Okay. Member Karen.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom.
Yes.
Member Hollins.
Yes.
Secretary Johnson, yes. Chair Poyetti.
Yes.
Member Wall.
Yes.
Mayor Wiedegardner. Oh, she's not here.
She is not. She's not at the meeting. That's correct. She did contact me that she would not be here.
So motion carries.
That motion carries. Okay, thank you all for that. And like I said, if someone squawks and we need to do it again because it didn't make it onto the agenda, we'll do it again in another session. Okay, and now we have Member Johnson Musad was creative and proactive enough to put together a proposed schedule of semi-monthly meetings for us moving forward. And I promptly put a wrench in it because I can't do most of the dates that were suggested for the date other than our regular meeting. But we're wondering if we can put some thought in public session to how we could work this. We've been doing it basically every couple of weeks saying, oh yeah, it's time to schedule another school committee meeting. That has worked well for my schedule, but it's perhaps somewhat other folks probably want a different arrangement. So if we could just discuss, and Member Johnson Musad, if you would like to lead the discussion, that may be helpful since you put so much thought and effort into this.
Absolutely. One thought I have is first looking at the next few months when people's schedules may be already in place and try to figure out the meetings for the special meetings for November and December. And then if we could find a night of the week to aim for the rest of the school year, that would be really useful to me in putting forward a draft schedule that we can discuss over email. So in other words, I'm proposing we establish the November and December dates tonight by just group discussion, and then look at January and beyond based on if there's a night of the week, like the third Tuesday or something like that, that would work for, or the fourth Tuesday that would work for us to have the meetings. That could be a good start for me to handle the rest of it over email. How does that sound to people as a process? All right, so.
This is Susan Farber. Just letting you know,
Yes.
I pasted into chat the schedule you had proposed originally.
Yes, okay, great. So Tuesday, November 24th, at least that doesn't conflict with Chair Priority's Wednesday conflict, although Member Wall has a meeting, I think, on Tuesday, and so if we had to schedule for that Tuesday, it would have to be 6:30 or later, is that what you said? So I don't know if, I think that is the week of, oh wait, what am I, yeah, that's the week of Thanksgiving.
It is.
I'm assuming Wednesday night and Thursday night aren't a great idea.
Or Friday, yeah.
Definitely not Friday. So I guess it's really down to Monday or Tuesday. Any problems with doing 6:30 on Tuesday? Did you say something, Superintendent?
I'm sorry. I have parking that day, and I left the last one early. So
Okay.
Does 6:30 give you enough time?
I'll leave at 6:30. We start at 5, and I think 6:30 is enough for me to donate to them.
All right. Thank you for the flexibility on that, Member Wong. Thanks to your other group in there to let you go. You're a valuable member of any committee you're on. All right, so then let's look at, what about Monday, December 21st?
Hey, did we just confirm Tuesday, November 24th at 6:30?
Yes.
I think that anyone that doesn't work for? Okay, so that'll be the next meeting. And then I can't do the December 21st. I cannot do that date.
Okay.
The Monday.
Great. Let's look at.
Our regular meeting that week is, or that month is on the 9th, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the week of the 21st is our vacation week.
Okay.
I wonder if,
do we want to do something the week of the 28th or the 29th?
No. How about Wednesday the 16th? How about 1 week later?
Oh, okay. Let's see.
What about council?
we do have city council that night. We are very good attendees at city council. Someone could either leave and come back, or we could tell them we could not be there that night. I don't know about the mayor, however. The mayor would likely need to be at city council. It's not the best night to schedule it because of that.
Yeah, and for public participation.
Thursday the 17th?
As long as people don't mind Joe interruptions, I can do Thursday the 17th.
Works well for me.
All Thursday evenings. This is Member Karen. I work Thursday and Friday evenings.
Okay.
Okay.
We're busy lunch.
Did we look at Monday the 14th? I can't remember.
I would say that that's just too close to the 9th.
It's really close. It's hard to post with 48
It's hard to
hours notice.
post. Yeah.
We have to post on Thursday the 10th.
Yeah.
And you may or may not, like if you vote us to do something on the 9th, we won't have it done by the 10th.
Yeah.
Is it possible that we will not need 2 meetings in December with the holiday week?
I think that it is likely. I think it makes sense for us to amend our practice for the month of December, considering we're meeting really at the best time to accommodate the holiday schedule for that month. I would propose us just making a motion to amend our current 2-week approximately every 2-week meetings for December have only one meeting.
So moved.
So Mr. Hollins has a comment.
I heard, I think, was that member Ekstrom? Or
I was going to make a comment, yes.
Member Ekstrom, and do I have a second on that?
What I was going to say is...
Hold on.
Wait. Oh, no.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, Chair Prada, you asked me to facilitate this. My proposal is let's establish the calendar and vote on it all at once.
Okay, all right. So I think we should only meet once.
Did you have a comment?
Yes, I wanted to say that some of the discussion seems to be the difficulty with posting an agenda. So I just wanted to say you can post everything that you want on the first agenda, and then instead of adjourning, just continue if you needed to. That's all. I don't care.
It's not posting. It's that if we meet on the 9th and then we meet at the beginning of the next week, we're posting right after we just had a meeting. It's not enough time to take any action on items that come up at a meeting on the 9th.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I feel about it. It's too much. It's too quick.
Unless we wanted to have another meeting in December that was a continuation of the first meeting, just so that it wasn't so long. In other words, since we may have more agenda items in December, given that there's only one meeting that month, just have it spread out over 2 nights.
Could I chime in?
Please.
I'm fine to have 2 meetings in December. However you want to do that, it's fine with me. You could certainly meet at the end of the month, Wednesday the 30th. If there's a good many days in December. So if we wanted to meet after the vacation week, we could do that. Or as we had suggested, put Thursday the 17th as a date to hold and cancel it if you don't need it. That might be better. Given that some of these decisions that the committee is making help us with approximately 2 weeks notice implement something. So if you had a December 17th meeting just held and there was an affirmative vote that was, for the start of the next month, that's somewhat helpful. I do want to say that when the agenda is posted in one meeting and continues into the second meeting, it can be challenging for members of the public to know when they should tune in. And for members of the administration, it's hard for us to know what actually to prepare for. So you have to prepare 100% of the material for the first meeting, and then half of it gets continued to the second meeting, but you don't know which half. We sometimes take things out of order. So it's for the purpose of planning ahead, it would be helpful to have fewer items and more frequent meetings.
Okay. So what about the 17th? I'm looking at a calendar here. Hold on just a second. So we're back to the 17th. Member Karen wouldn't be able to attend, but we could hold that and perhaps looks like there may not be a night when every member will be able to attend.
How about the 30th?
The 30th, yeah. What about, that's the 5th Wednesday, Chair Prayati, but might that work for you? I know the 4th Wednesdays weren't working great for you.
It's so I did not see that there was a month in this discussion that was a 5th Wednesday. So I will actually have, and because of when the holiday falls, I believe I have a meeting on the 30th and not the 23rd that month, but let me quickly check that I could do the 30th. Let me temporarily say yes, I can do the 30th.
Okay. Then can we start the...
What time, Member Johnson, is that a 6 p.m.?
Member Wall, is the 6 p.m. start time work for you on the 30th of December?
Yes.
Anyone else have a problem with 6 p.m. on December 30? Okay, Amy's still checking. So then getting into 2021, this isn't about nailing down all of the dates, but it's more about just giving me a sense of which nights to look for. It looks like Wednesdays and Thursdays aren't great, so...
Mr. Johnson, there are meetings that alternate, so it actually is not always if you have a first and third Monday, it's more that the alternating schedule plays in. I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I might suggest that by the first meeting in January, we announce the following several months of meeting dates. And because the open meeting law allows for exactly one exception, and that includes scheduling by email, you've moved us through the next 2 months and set those dates, which is tremendously helpful. And we maybe could engage in some email conversation just about setting dates for January or the few months in the first of the year.
Okay, but what I would like to know before I dive into that is, for example, finding out that member Karen works on Thursday nights is really useful. Are there any other nights of the week that people have fixed commitments on? Stay away from Thursdays all the time, for example. Okay. All right.
I generally don't want Thursdays as well. Thursdays are really hard for me.
Could I ask a question? Are you planning to get away from the regularly scheduled second Wednesday?
No, those are fixed. The second Wednesday school committee meetings. We're just talking about the special meetings.
The second meeting. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I'll see you in email.
Good job, Member Johnson.
Discussion.
Good job. I'm sorry I kept interrupted you. I'm just in the habit. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Can we set a time for the redrawing meeting?
No.
Do you all have your calendars for next?
No, we can handle. Yeah, sorry I don't get back to you right away, but yeah, we can definitely get that scheduled by email.
Okay.
Okay, thank you all for doing that. And now I believe we have reached the point in the meeting, am I right, where we'll move into executive session. Executive session may be called and will be called, because I so declare, for MGL C30A, subsection 21, exemption number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body. So I would take, and we will not be returning for a vote. We will end the public session. We will move into executive session. We will not come back. So I would take a motion now to open the executive session.
So moved.
That was Member Johnson Musad.
The executive session and close.
Yes. Oh, can only do one at a time. Yeah. So can we? So we're moving to open the executive session. Member Johnson Musad, can you take a roll call, please?
Did we get the second on that?
We did. It was Member Wall.
Okay, great. Member Karen?
To adjourn.
Yes.
Isn't the first meeting for executive session and the second meeting's to adjourn?
We have to close the public session after we open the executive session. Yes.
Okay. Great. Member Karen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Yes.
Member Hollins?
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad, I'm a yes. Chair Proietti?
Yes.
Member Wall?
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Okay, and we will take a motion to adjourn the public session.
So moved. Hollins.
Member Hollins in a second.
Second.
Member Wall. And a roll call vote, please.
Member Karen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ekstrom?
Yes.
Member Hollins?
Yes.
Secretary Johnson Musad, I'm a yes. Chair Proietti?
Yes.
Member Wall?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so the public meeting is closed as of 7:55 p.m. and we'll take a 5-minute break and I'll see all of the school committee members in executive session. Thank you.